Did William Shakespeare, yes, that Shakespeare, have a hand in writing the King James Bible? It sounds like a literary conspiracy theory, the kind whispered in late-night libraries or posted in obscure corners of Reddit. But every few years this question rises again, like a ghost from the Globe Theatre. Could the Bard of Avon have left his fingerprints on one of the most influential books in history? Before you roll your eyes, know this: the clues are stranger than fiction, and the timeline suspiciously convenient. To understand how Shakespeare and the Bible even end up in the same sentence, we have to travel back to the early 1600s. It's a time of religious upheaval, political drama, and literary genius. A time when one monarch commissions a Bible, and another pens plays that still bend the English language centuries later. Let's start at the surface and then dig. Because once we peel back the respectable layers of church history and poetic fame, what we find might be more entangled than anyone expected. Let's get straight to the weird part. There's a theory that William Shakespeare secretly left his mark, literally, on the King James Bible completed in 1611. Specifically, people point to Psalm 46. Open a King James Bible to Psalm 46. Count 46 words in, and what word do you land on? Shake. Now count 46 words from the end, not including the final cellar. You get spear. Shakespeare. At Psalm 46, in the 46th year of Shakespeare's life. Coincidence? Maybe. But for fans of literary puzzles and coded messages, it's hard to ignore. Shakespeare was born in 1564. By 1610 to 1611, when the translation of the King James Bible was being finalised, he would have been 46. So the psalm has shake at the start, spear at the end, and it's the 46th psalm. While Shakespeare was 46. For some, this is enough to trigger alarm bells, or at least a raised eyebrow. To skeptics, this is just a numerical fluke, an oddity of English phrasing. After all, the original texts of the Bible were in Hebrew and Greek. Shakespeare wasn't translating those. But those who believe in deeper codes and literary fingerprints ask, what if the bard was consulted? Not for theology, but for poetry. The King James Bible isn't just a translation, it's a work of literary art. Its rhythm, flow and language elevated scripture to an entirely new level of English eloquence. And if there were ever someone to call for help on poetic cadence, it would have been the man who gave us, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" In 1604, King James I of England authorised a new English translation of the Bible. The goal? To solidify religious unity, cement his own power, and produce a version of the Bible both accurate and beautifully written. He convened 47 scholars, divided into 6 committees, working in Oxford, Cambridge, and Westminster. These men were chosen for their mastery of Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, but also for their English literary ability. But here's the catch: none of their names were attached to the final product. The King James Bible was published anonymously. We know the translators were academics and theologians, but what if there was one anonymous contributor added for style, not scholarship? Shakespeare, by then, was already a literary celebrity. By 1611 he had published Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. His fame had spread across Europe. His command of English, especially biblical-sounding English, was unrivalled. Could someone in the king's inner circle have pulled him in for a quiet consult? No record confirms this, but no record denies it either. And that's where conspiracies thrive, in the negative space between what we know and what might have been. Some phrases in the King James Bible sound suspiciously Shakespearean, not just beautiful but performative, dramatic. Take this from Ecclesiastes 3. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. Or this from Job 3:3. Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived. These lines echo the dramatic rhythm of the stage. Now compare them to a line from Macbeth. Tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Or Hamlet. To die to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache. See the resemblance? It's not proof, but it's poetic proximity, a flavour, a cadence. Was this simply a case of overlapping eras and shared cultural language? Or did the translators borrow a little from the bard? Or borrow the bard himself? Sure, it sounds like something out of a Dan Brown novel. But it's worth noting that during this era, code and cipher were considered a legitimate form of intellectual art. Bacon himself wrote about it, even developing a binary code known as the Baconian cipher. If someone were to embed their fingerprint into a sacred text, without ever signing their name, Bacon had both the skill and the motive to do it. So now we have Shakespeare, possibly recruited for style, and Bacon, possibly orchestrating the whole thing, like a literary conductor hidden behind the curtain. Could they have worked together? Or, brace yourself, could Shakespeare have been Bacon? If Francis Bacon had the mind, the power, and the tools, and Shakespeare had the name, the fame, and the flair, what happens when their timelines, talents, and secrets overlap? Enter the Shakespeare authorship question, a theory that refuses to die. For centuries, skeptics have argued that William Shakespeare of Stratford, a glovemaker's son with limited formal education, could not possibly have written the towering masterpieces attributed to him. The historical Shakespeare left behind no manuscripts, no letters, no library, and no evidence of academic training. Yet the plays and sonnets are filled with legal terminology, royal court protocols, foreign languages, and deep philosophical and theological references, things that a man of Bacon's stature would have known intimately. So some ask, was Shakespeare just a mask? Could the name have been a front for a group of writers? Or a single genius like Bacon, who needed to keep their identity hidden? Here's where it gets even stranger. The first known reference to Shakespeare's death appears 7 years after it allegedly happened, in the first folio published in 1623. And that folio, it was organised, edited, and possibly written by Ben Jonson, who was close friends with both Shakespeare and Bacon. Now zoom out for a moment. You have a Bible published anonymously in 1611, a famous playwright whose personal records vanish around the same time, a brilliant philosopher with documented interest in codes, language, and spiritual transformation, and an underground current of writers who believed that words could change the world, if only they could speak through the right vessel. Could Shakespeare have been that vessel? And if so, what else did he, or they, slip into the King James Bible? So let's gather the strands. You've got a Bible written in soaring English, the origins of which remain deliberately anonymous. You've got Psalm 46, oddly arranged with shake and spear, bookending the verse right when Shakespeare was 46 years old. You've got Francis Bacon, the philosopher, statesman, alchemist, hiding in plain sight, obsessed with encoding truth into texts, overseeing royal projects, and possibly ghostwriting behind the veil of a popular pen name. You've got a playwright whose biography has just enough missing years, just enough unanswered questions, and just enough poetic gravity to suggest he may have done far more than entertain kings. He may have whispered into the very bones of the Bible. No signed confession, no paper trail, just fingerprints. Style, timing, language, patterns. Maybe it's all just a coincidence. A beautiful, perfectly aligned, historically convenient coincidence. But maybe not. Maybe the King James Bible isn't just a sacred book. Maybe it's the greatest ghost-written masterpiece in English history. And if that's true, then the question isn't just, did Shakespeare help write the Bible? The real question is, how much of what we call divine was actually the work of men in the shadows? Whether there's any bit of truth in the Shakespeare and King James Bible theory, it's anyone's guess. What do you think? Hogwash or hidden agenda?